What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Good morning to everybody. Probably still, yeah, just noon if you're on the East Coast, so it's close enough. Good to see everybody. We had a good time last night with our stream, so it's good to see everybody. Hopefully, coming back again. We're gonna cover the different bands of the Comanche. So let me turn my light on. I'm just getting set up in the office here. So there we go. This will just be like a short one. We'll kind of go over the bands of the Comanche, what we're going to do tonight for our live stream. We got the episode coming out tomorrow, it sounds like. And so we got a big week coming up. We're going to dive into the deep end just to get going. I'm trying to bring up a map of the Comanche bands. I think it would help everybody to understand what Comanche band lives where because they are part of the Comanche tribe. There is one Comanche tribe, but it's not under one power. I think that was a big misunderstanding that the government had in dealing with them uh, that put a real hitch in everybody's giddy up because there was this understanding amongst a lot of tribes that there was one overarching government. The way that we do business is the way that they do business. There's one entity that we can deal with, and that's especially with the Comanche, not the way that it was. Let me see. I'm going to turn these lights on real quick. There we go. It's sunny outside, but it's not very lit up. There we go. Cool. So, like I said, probably a fair amount of you are familiar with the basics of the various different bands, but there is a significant amount of difference in each band. They spread out kind of over the north of Texas, then part of Oklahoma, a little bit of Kansas, and into New Mexico. So we're talking a quarter of a million square miles being inhabited by. What's up, Mike? Good to see you, man. Mike Holtz in the chat, a real OG from Detroit, right? Shout out Detroit, man. But yeah, there's distinct differences in the bands. There was a fair amount of cross pollination. I don't know if that's the term, but a fair amount of movements between the bands. So you'd see people move from one band to the other. They generally got along swimmingly. Not a lot of intertribal, I guess that would be within the tribe conflict. Bamadiana, good morning. Good morning. I just got your email with your shipping address, so thank you very much. We'll get the mug out to you as soon as possible. I haven't got the actual shipment in yet because we're tweaking a couple things to this beautiful mug here, but other than that, we'll have them in soon. So hopefully you enjoy it. I'm having a good time with it. It's a hefty mug. Terry R, good to see you. Good to see you. Got all the regulars here. So what we're going to do, like I said, it won't be a terribly long stream, but I think just a short coverage of the different bands would really help everyone's understanding. Now, the problem for some reason is that it is tougher than you would think to find a map of all the different bands. So I did my best. We got a little blurry option here, but a good starter for anyone interested in the Comanche. If any of this is interesting to you, sure, everyone knows Empire of the Summer Moon. It's a great book, but it has a bit of a peripheral, even for being, a pretty in-depth book. It's got a peripheral understanding or peripheral presentation of the Comanche. So if you really want to deep dive, I would grab the book that I've got linked at the top of the chat here. It is by, I always mess this name up, but it is by Pekka Hamalekin, something like that. Okay. I always mess up saying that, but it's called Comanche Empire. It is the most in-depth study of the Comanche that I have seen yet. And it really gets into a granular breakdown of all the sub bands, because we're going to talk about the major bands today. The Quahati, the Nakoni, the Penateka, the Katsoteka. But there are several sub bands that exist kind of parallel or in the same territory. They might be part of the larger Nakoni band, but they are, in fact, their own distinct little thing, which I didn't really understand before reading. I'm just going to call him Pekka. I'm telling you, with all due respect, man, but I just can't say that name for whatever reason. Let's see who's in the chat so far. Kristen, a whole Pomo Indian from Northern California. Oh, maybe did you watch our Clear Lake Massacre episode? I spent a lot of time up in that area, so it's beautiful up there, great people, and I was roughly familiar with the tribe, so I thought that would be a cool story. Though honestly, I'd never heard of Massacre Island. I spent a lot of time in the Clear Lake area and I never heard of it, so that was news to me. Pet detectives, good to see you. Terry R, we said what's up already. Pomo from Covelo. Yeah, I know that Covelo, Willits, Ukiah, Nice. What else is up there? I know I'm missing one. Uh, how am I missing one? But many of them up there. Many of them up there. Kristen 420 says Bloody Island. Yes, Bloody Island. Oh, I think I said Massacre Island. Bloody Island. Yes. Good to see everybody. And we're just jumping into a little midday live stream. So if you're just jumping in, we're going to cover the bands of the Comanche. If you are interested at all in further in-depth reading in this, I would grab the copy of the book that I've got listed at the top of the chat there. I'm going to pull up this map that I found. It's a little blurry, but we can work with it. So let me share the screen here. I believe it is Comanche Bands. There we go. And good news, guys. I got OBS, which is a streaming software, downloaded. So hopefully by tonight's stream, we'll have a little bit more of a slick, streamlined look here. We'll be able to do some more video sharing and picture sharing a little more smoothly. It should look like a little more professional operation, if you can believe that. So we're going to share the map here. This was really the best one that I could find. Let me see if I can zoom in on it, but maybe it's not going to zoom in. Let's see. This might work. Oh, I can't believe it's not letting me zoom in for you guys. Oh, let's see. That presents a little bit of a problem. Let's see what you guys are seeing here. I'm going to have to work around this. It was working for me earlier. Famous last words. Let's see. That's still not working great. Okay, let's see if I can bring up this second option here. Okay, we can see on our left-hand side here. So like I said, I really tried to find a quality map. This is about as good as we're going to get for this. So let's start from, it's probably easier to start from the south working upwards, but really in the Comanche's diaspora, this would have been kind of reverse order. So you would have started at the top and then made your way down, because the Comanche came from north to south. So when you're looking at this map, the tribes, the bands that settle in the panhandle of Texas, the Oklahoma area, are going to be the ones that settled first. And there was a little bit more of a diaspora southward from there. But the Panateca, you'll see there in the central Texas area here in Austin, that would have been the tribe that you most likely would have, the band that you were most likely going to deal with. They are known as the honey eaters. Usually sometimes they're known as the Comanches of the woods, because this is really kind of the only Comanche that were even in timbered country. In general, this is going to be a lot of generalizations, but there wasn't a lot of trees in the Comanche world. So the Panateca are the southernmost band. They're known as the honey eaters in general, because they're in the hill country or in the central Texas area where they could find bees and eat a fair amount of honey. They're pretty literal descriptions in the Comanche band naming world. Just making sure the stream is still going. So then you can see we'll work our way a little bit eastward. We have the Tanawa and the Tanima, and I had to look up those names because I always mix those two up. The Tanawa are those who stay downstream, so they're right on just a little south of the Red River. And Texas just has a tiered bunch of rivers that run east to west. I think maybe it's west to east, but they run parallel through the state in this kind of stepped, tiered, cross-state system, really, that they have going on in Texas. A lot more rivers than I would have thought. But the Tanawa are those who stay downstream, and the Tanima are the liver eaters. And they're getting close to the East Texas timberline, but they're still in the plains area, and everything depended on the buffalo range. So it's just kind of like, what part of the buffalo range do you want to choose? The Panateca got the southernmost, the Tanawa and the Tanima, who are much smaller bands and really kind of fold into our next larger band, the Nakoni. And then sometimes I mix these names up, guys. So the Nakoni are those who turn back. I believe that's because they were either, that's from going against a plain storm. I've read that, or returning up the river. So there's a lot of these names are very literal. So it's something to do with going back up north, it sounds like, but those who turn back. And I've seen the spelling be spelled with the Noconis and with an Nokonis. So little different spelling there, but same people. Up a little bit north of them, the kind of northeastern block, the easternmost block of the Texas Panhandle, and into western Oklahoma are the Katsoteca. Uh, that is the, I don't have the, I used to have it memorized, guys, but I think it's slipped out of my brain. The Katsoteca, the buffalo eaters. They were known for organizing big hunting parties, and they were tight with the Kiowa. All the bands are cool with the Kiowa, but the Katsoteca are really in the Kiowa's territory. And they were known for being good intermediaries with other tribes, so like the Cheyenne, the Shoshone, the Ute. A lot of even in the Comanche world, there's a lot of reverence giving to diplomats. So I was surprised in looking into this that different bands had different. They were intermediaries for different tribes. Now, the Comanches world was certainly one built on warfare, but it's not this bellicose, constant warfare machine, especially amongst other tribes. So there was a fair amount of dealing and diplomacy with other tribes and with the Comancheros and with the Americans and the Germans here in the hill country. So there was more cooperation and more, I had to use the word again, diplomacy than the casual observer gives the Comanche credit for. But still, clearly, right? A lot of war. So up north of the Yamparica, we have up north of the Katsoteca, we have the Yamparica, known as yap or yam eaters, which has something to do with tuber roots that were available up in the northern plains, which isn't their preferred source of food, but it was an option when buffalo meat was hard to come by. The Comanche in general disdained most other foods than buffalo. They did not like fish. They'd eat it if they had to. Same with turtles. And they would usually just take the turtles and throw them on a live fire in their shell. And it's like it was a convenient thing. They're like, oh, sweet. Like a microwavable, like a hot pocket, right? Like a very, very macabre hot pocket. Let me make sure everybody can. I don't know how to go back to the chat yet. So hopefully everybody can still see me. But yes, when things got rough, they would eat fish. They would eat birds. They would eat tubers, roots. Pecans were a pretty common food because we've talked about this before, but there are veritable orchards of pecan trees along many of Texas's rivers. I'm trying to think of what else. Antelope, deer, game meats that there would be elk there. There would be some black bear in that area, which sounds crazy, but there was more diverse wildlife in Texas than we give it credit for in the 19th century. So there were options for the Comanche diet, but in general, they were just disgusted with anything that wasn't derived from the buffalo. Then we're going west. I'm sorry. Yeah, west. Sometimes my directions get a little messed up here. West into the northeastern corner of New Mexico and the easternmost part of the Texas Panhandle are the Quahadas is how I most see it, or the Quahadas. It's seems like maybe just kind of a regional choice there. But that is the, give me a second, guys, the antelope eaters. So they're way out basically on the plains, the open expanses of Texas and New Mexico. They kind of hold, they're a very small band, all things considered, but they hold a real reputation as being the farthest removed. They were the last to come into the reservations. They were very divorced from any kind of intercultural pollination because they were so far out on the plains and a very, very inside a warrior culture, and even more notably bellicose people. This is where Quanah Parker found him. This is what Quanah Parker was born into. This is where Cynthia Parker, his mother, was eventually taken. I believe she was taken by the Panateca and then through marriage and trade made her way to the Quahadis with I'm blanking on Quana's dad's name. Oh, I'm ashamed of myself. Uh, but eventually made her way out into the furthest reaches of Comancheria. I think the Quahadis might be my preferred research subject, but a very, even within the Comanches, a notably bellicose people on the furthest northeast ranges of Comancheria. I think it's even important to break down Comanche because to them, they were known as the Normono. We've talked about this with many tribes. It's not uncommon to name yourself the people, which has a connotation to it that we are the people and you are not. So that doesn't mean that we don't like you. In many cases, it means that we don't consider you people. Let me bring I got enough of the map. All right, there we go. Live. All right, sorry about that, guys. I started sharing the screen and it wouldn't show me the chats. Oh, wow, $10 super chat. Guys, sorry. I couldn't see the chats as they were coming in. So, Mike Holt, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate that. Comanche Talk warrants a super chat, brother. Man, thank you so much. Been amped up for it all day. Side note, the team has the first weigh in for the season. Some of the guys are cutting, so they're looking to be done. I understand that. Is it your team? Are you? I forget. We've talked wrestling before. It is though. It's the beginning of the season, man. It's a wonderful time, and it's a long haul. So you just got to make it to March. I understand that feeling though. You cutting weight's not fun, man. Let's see. Terry R, we've got oh wow, another $10 super chat. Thank you so much. That's what makes the streams possible. So thank y'all so much. Amen to that, Mike Holtz. Yeah, we got some wrestlers in here, it looks like, which is anybody watch the Cy-Hawk duel? I just got done watching that. That's pretty crazy. Iowa State defeated Iowa for the first time in 20 years. Let's see. Thank y'all so much. Really appreciate that. Bama Deanna says Comanche came from Shoshone. The name is kind of they're it's either Ute or Shoshone. The Shoshone had periods of being cool with the Comanche because they are kind of a Shoshone derivation. But yeah, it was kind of it's not what they called themselves. And this is pretty common with tribes. It's not the name that they called themselves, but some other local tribe says like, yeah, those guys are always fighting us. And that's the name that sticks. Because like the Navajo aren't the Navajo, they're the Dine. Dine or some derivation of that is pretty common, especially amongst tribes that come down from the Northwest. But yeah, they wouldn't know themselves as the Comanche. They wouldn't know themselves as the Norteños. They would know themselves as the Normono, and then different, bands within that. You would really most likely define yourself as a Quahadi or a Kotsoteca or a Yamparica, etc., because that's your first line of identification is what band are you from, and then these bands are in this kind of loose coalition where they do work as one. They consider themselves under the same cultural umbrella, not necessarily the same genetic umbrella, because there's a lot of adoption in the Comanche tribe because their birth rates were crazy low. They had a crazy miscarriage rate because they're a horse-bound culture, pretty common in the Mongols, the Cheyenne, the Blackfoot, but especially common in the Comanche. So their genetic line is one of the most convoluted in North American, Native American culture. So they were very open to adoption, but the bands are kind of operating relatively autonomously, had slightly different cultures. Obviously, you can tell the yam eaters had a little bit different culture than the honey eaters, obviously, right? And the antelope eaters. But they're often very literal descriptions. So like, this is what they eat or this is what they do. And that's not different. That's not terribly different from Comanche individual naming. It would be like, this guy stinks. We call him Stinker. Stuff like that. All right. I'm going to check the chat again. But I think understanding the different bands really helps you understand the tribe and how it operated in its totality. Understand the tribe's range, which is huge, and kind of who governed which section of what, and how the Comanche were impacted, because you get one band, the Penteca, just not wiped out, but they're taking 30 to 50% losses just from disease alone. Who was involved, who was very close knit with European encroachment for decades and decades. While the Quahati, so a lot of the Penteca dress would be more influenced by Texan culture or Mexican culture. There was a lot of cross pollination there. Or their diet would be, they would do more raiding in that area just because of their proximity. But in general, they're much more closely tied and cross pollinated than the Quahati would be. Like a Quahati might go his whole life and never meet an Anglo, or never meet a Mexican. They probably meet a Comanchero. But just it does play into their lifestyle, into the smaller aspects of their culture, and it helps to, I think it helps the fan to understand, the fan of history, to understand the different bands, because it helps you understand the tribe in its totality and why they did certain things, and why they didn't do others. Did the tribes ever unify? The bands did unify. So I gotta look the names up. The Tanima and the Tanawa were pretty tight, kind of. They were independent on their own, but they were pretty tight with the Katsoteca, because that's the nearest larger band. And in Pekka Hamilton's book, it's tough for me. I always thought it was a woman, and when I looked it up, I was like, well, it's a dude. He breaks down the sub bands of sub bands in even greater detail. I thought that might be a little too far in the weeds for a 20-30 minute live stream. But yeah, if you are just down for Comanche stuff, you got to get, it's called Comanche Empire by Pekka Hamilton. The link is at the top of the screen. Highly, highly encourage it. It is a deep, deep dive. But yeah, so many bands, and a lot of bands would exist for a while and then kind of fold into a larger band. So earlier in Comanche history, there was more bands, and as things went along, they just kind of folded into each other. Mike Holt says, I always appreciated how direct Native Americans were when it came to giving names to one another. I am too, yeah. I remember some of the names being like smells like skunk, looks like turtle. Yeah, and I touched on this a little bit, but it's honestly hard to do within YouTube's terms of service, because the Comanche names could be a little vulgar. Like Buffalo Hump is not Buffalo Hump. That's not his name. His name is, if you've ever taken a little blue pill, I have not, but if you've ever taken a little blue pill that Bob Dole was in a commercial for in the 90s, I believe he was in a commercial for it, right? That's the problem. That won't go down, right? Won't go down. That's Buffalo Hump's name. Buffalo Hump is just is it metaphor? I got like a B in English, but it's a metaphor that they could put in white newspapers at the time. Quana means, some people say it means fragrance or smell, but I'm pretty sure it means stink. It means like odor or stinker. Trying to think of some other ones. There's one I forget his name in Comanche, but it's talked about in Pekka's book, and it's talked about in Empire. I have Empire always on my desk here. So it's talked about in Empire of the Summer Moon. It means coyote, female reproductive parts. They're like, it's where like the Cheyenne and the Blackfoot will be like, I am Running Wolf and I am Proud Bear, etc. These, I'm just making these up, but they are more eloquent names, and they're more they're built to be a little dignified, may not be the word, but yeah, kind of. Where the Comanche are just, it's like kind of biker gang names. They're just like, I'm Stink, I'm Coyote reproductive parts, I'm that won't go down. They're all just a little blue, you know. My ended name is Cool Arrow. I like, what's up, Super Grunt? Good to see you, man. Surrender Monkey says, addicted wild creature. I mean, that'd be a good name. I'd go for that. Surrender Monkey, keep feeding your brother them beers, says Pet Detective. Surrender Monkey. So in modern times, it takes a lot of people to keep landmass. How many people of a tribe would police an area? Very few. Like, we're talking 25,000 in total. If you think about that in terms of a small town, a relatively small town in America, that one little small town, let's say in Texas. We can take Seguin. Seguin's about 25,000 people. That's a little dot on the map that most people don't even know exists in Texas, which is a shame. But small town in America, and they have to take care of an area that spans from from central Texas to eastern Oklahoma to oh no yeah, from eastern Oklahoma to eastern New Mexico to Kansas. It's just a massive 250,000-ish acre area, and you've got 25,000 people to police it. Really, you've probably got half that, because half that generally are going to be males, and even fewer of that proportion are going to be fighting age males. So you're really probably looking at what, like maybe 12,000 warriors in total that are actually going to be able and go out and do anything. Same with hunting. Maybe 12 to 15,000. Even that, no, probably be, no, that'd be like 10,000, let's say. So very, very few in total. When you think about how many people would be in the Union Army, even tribes like the Cheyenne, the Blackfoot were more numerous. Let's see. And the Comanche were the wealthiest as well. So per capita wealth means generally in land and horse flesh, they were very, very wealthy. And it happened basically like that. Cool Arrow, that's a good name. I like that. John Doe, I don't think I can say that out loud, but yes, that's what it was. It rhymes with, have you ever seen that Seinfeld episode? It rhymes with Mulva. Let's say that. Late to the party, morning, y'all. Arizona boy, what's up, dude? Good to have you. All right, I'm scanning back through the chat now. So the Comanche must have had several leaders. Yes, that was Pet Detectives asked. So the Comanche must have had several leaders. That was the root of the problem for especially the American government trying to deal with them. They thought they were one entity. So we're going to negotiate with the Comanche tribe and get a deal done. But they would generally be negotiating with the Penateca chief, but negotiating with the Penateca chief doesn't get you anywhere with the Quahati, doesn't get you anywhere with the Katsoteca, doesn't get you anywhere with the Yamparica, because those are separate entities. They are culturally under one umbrella, under the Comanche umbrella. But just because the Penateca chief agreed to something, that's got nothing to do with the Quahati chief. It's a decentralized organization. So that was a huge problem. The United States government did not understand that. They never understood that. Maybe in the later iterations of the war between them and the Comanche, the Texas Rangers did understand that, but they weren't terribly interested in negotiations. But the American government, with all these tribes, they just think like, oh, well, this is a Cheyenne, oh, this is the Comanche, but there wasn't one entity. You had to go negotiate with every individual band, so that just caused a lot of problems. We'll say that. Let's see. Cool Arrow, not that. Scanning back through, guys. You know how this works. Like, it takes me a minute to make sure I got everybody. I got to read some of these chats before I read them out loud, because we're throwing in some of our own hypothetical Comanche names here. Getting a little blue, fellas. But I like it. You got to be on the edge, Probably give it a few. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So everybody. Okay. Did I skip out again? Guys, I don't know why it does that. I was actually still rolling, but I just couldn't see the chat. So I'll try and figure that out today. Let's see. Late to the party. Okay. We got that. Cool Arrow is a play on words for a Spanish slang meaning. Oh, is it really? I didn't know that. But still, I would take that, because it fits me. All right. Any questions about the Comanche bands? Because we have a Comanche episode coming up. So if you hear of a story in Central Texas, and anywhere in the hill country, you can safely assume, doesn't mean 100%, you can safely assume that is a Penateca band fighting there. If you hear of one up in Oklahoma, it's likely a Yamparica band, maybe a Katsoteca band as well. If you hear a story that kind of originates in the New Mexico area, you're likely dealing with the Quahadi. If you hear one that deals in the or that's originates in the Dallas area, you're likely dealing with the Nakoni band. So at least it gives you some context. In writing it, I pretty much have to say the Comanche because it gets a little too confusing for the viewer who's not familiar with different bands of the Comanche. But this, I thought, like, okay, if we can go over it, just me and you guys, just us, then hey, everybody here will have a much more solid understanding, and that just deepens the story. Let's see. And also these bands and the Comanche were relatively very recent arrivals to these areas. They had just driven the Apache out, so they haven't been here for centuries. They haven't been in their respective areas for centuries. It is maybe a century at best, somewhere a century and a half, somewhere in there. So they're relatively recent arrivals to these places. And the further south, like the Pennateca would be the most recent arrival to their area. That's what I kind of wanted to talk about at the beginning. They're coming from the north and working their way south. So the Yamparika, the Quahati got into their areas first, and the Pennateca bands, the Nakoni kept working their way south, east, west. Let's see. But they took every little bit of their territory inch by inch from mostly the Apache. There's the Waco, the Tawankoni, the uh, Tonkawa. They did not, the Pennateca and the Tonkawa did not get along. Let's see. How did the Texas Plains Indian tribes deal with the winter months? I'm working outside and the wind chill sucks. Dude, it sucks here. It's terrible. It's the same as any of the tribes from, you know, the plains up north. Like it's even sucks in the hill country. But they would have lodges. It's supposed to be warmer than you would think inside of a lodge, but they all use the teepee. So you would just get that set up with a fire inside, and they'd have buffalo robes. I think we underestimate that. If you've ever had a buffalo coat, it is very insulated. And so buffalo robes, I think, would do a lot of the trick, and fires going, and they would just kind of hunker down. The buffalo weren't terribly plentiful during that time, and you just kind of deal with it. We're talking about a very tough people, but man, I hate the Texas cold. Anytime I go outside, the Comanche are generally the first people I think of because it's just like, how did you deal with this? This sucks. Let's see. Technology transformed the tribe overnight, basically. Yes, and I think I've talked about this before, but the technology that transformed them the quickest, faster than uh, metal tools, faster than firearms, faster than any of that, is the horse. People think it's an animal, and it is, and they viewed it as an animal, but it is a technology, and it's a new technology, and these tribes harnessed it. No pun intended. Incredibly quickly. The Comanche specifically, and it's also an economic resource. S.E. Gwynn describes in Summer of the Empire Moon how horses, it's each horse is effectively $100 bill. So the Comanche got the horses very, very early on in their diaspora from what's the New Mexico town? Now I'm blanking on it. Gosh, I can't believe I have to look that up. It's still early in the morning for me, you guys. I haven't had enough coffee. What's the New Mexico town? Pueblo, the Pueblo Revolution. It's not Pueblo, is it? Guys, I got to look it up. I'm ashamed of myself. Pueblo, maybe it is. You guys would know. Pueblo Revolt. Yeah, there we go. That let the horses loose. Until then, the Spanish damn sure regarded horses as a technology, and they knew we cannot let this get out because, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know it's going to be bad. And they were right. They were absolutely right. That's what made the Comanche war machine able to function. And then as it worked its way up, it got the Cheyenne and Blackfoot war machines able to function. But the Comanche really got them very early in the game, and it just changed their tribe faster than anything. Let's see. Arizona Boy says they wore way less attire than other tribes. They didn't practice much religion, right? And usually painted themselves black, symbolizing unaliving, which set them apart from most tribes, especially in the early iterations, 18 teens, 1820s, 1830s. I think of them in my mind as Mike Tyson, like that kind of garb and attitude, very stripped down. Like Tyson had no socks, black trunks, black shoes, and that's pretty much it, right? Like no robe, none of the fancy stuff. He would just walk out and fight. That's very akin. That's a great comparison for how the Comanche operated, especially in the 20s, 30s of the 1800s. Black war paint, sometimes a buffalo head headdress, but little to nothing in the way of feathers, little to nothing in the way of ceremony. Like, yeah, no creation story to speak of, no, very, very little in the way of formalized practices. They were animists who believed there was power, or they called it puha, which is maybe not the best word, but it's their word. Um, so they believed there was power in animals and trees and rocks, and that's where they could derive their powers, derive their spiritual lessons from. But it's a very loose structure. The Kiowa, just north of them, their buddies, had a much more formalized practice with dances and sun dances and um, weaving baskets and ornate headdresses. But the Comanche did not have that. They seemed to just not even care. They're like, we're here to, you know, take over Texas, basically. So yes, very few of the bands had anything in the way of adornment. But as you progress, you start going into the 1850s, 60s, 70s. You see that especially the northernmost bands who are in contact with the Cheyenne, who are just getting the Comanche warred with the Cheyenne for a while. But as things got tougher and tougher during the war with the Army, they became pretty tight allies. And a lot of their style, they had ornate headdresses and they had ornate dances. They had ornate beadwork. They would wrap the tails of their hair in beaver. So you'll see that with a lot of pictures of Quanah. He's got his ponytails wrapped in beaver. You can't really see it all that well in black and white photos, but the things that are kind of, they look, it's kind of even hard to tell that they're ponytails, but on either side of him, he'll have these kind of fuzzy looking things. That's beaver tail wrapped around. The Comanche didn't have a lot of cultural complexities, but they loved their hair. They loved singing, and every guy had his own personal war song. So they loved singing. They loved their hair. They loved their family. They would dote on their children until a certain age when they had to be 7 or so, when they had to be started being trained for a warrior. But they were very family centric, loved singing. You would just hear Comanche warriors singing their songs all the time, or they would make up songs about, like, look at that turtle I saw in the river, or I'm such an awesome hunter, et cetera, et cetera. And they loved their hair. Everybody had their own kind of style, and they would braid it and comb it all the time. That was a very big part of Comanche culture. But yes, in general, like when they showed up at the mission in San Saba, the Spanish mission, they had it was just a bunch of dudes painted black. So it must have been really terrifying. Let's see. Winter in Texas. Put some clothes on. All right, I get it. I get it, but it's worse than it sounds like. It is a brutal wind that comes and cuts through everything. Did the Comanche get any protected reservation land in Texas? Not in Texas. No, Texas doesn't have any reservations. They are up in Oklahoma. I forget where their headquarters are. Maybe Durant, Oklahoma, but I might have that wrong. Comanche were basically Native American Spartans. Yeah, that's not that far off. Or Mongol culture, things like that, where it's just a very minimalist culture. And like any other culture, it starts to be influenced by their cohorts and their neighbors. But yeah, it's surprisingly stripped down and in almost antithetical to most people's notions of plains tribes, because they did not have much in the way of ornamentation. They did not have much in the way of, like I said, creation story or theology, and they they weren't these tall. A lot of James Fenimore Cooper's descriptions and a lot of Remington paintings portray Plains tribes as very tall, statuesque people. And then a lot of contemporary newspaper accounts, one from, I believe, Houston, certainly one from Comanche, or one from San Antonio before, maybe after the Council House fight. But they're a little they're not very flattering to the Comanche, because they'll just say, like, there's these short people, they're very short, and they're a squat people, and heavy boned, and their ponies are all unshod, They seem to pick the worst ponies of the bunch. They're all, you know, ganted up, or they're all stubby legged, little crossbred ponies. But then they would say they're the fastest horses and the meanest fighters. Nobody could understand what was happening here, because it was like they're not on these big statuesque war horses. They're not these tall, giant, picturesque tribe. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but they are not what we've heard about. And it's very confusing that this stocky group of horse warriors on horses that would, seem like, is a harsh term, but throwaway horses, especially during the time, they should not be winning here. This is like a football team showing up against another college, and like they have a rickety bus and crappy equipment, and they just beat the crap out of your team. And it happened again and again and again and again in Texas history. And they're just, for decades, the Texas people are going, the Texas settlers, the Spanish, the Mexican settlers are all going like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why do we just keep getting run over by these people? They just give you one of these emojis. They're just like, I don't know. I don't know. And that's why Hayes and the Rangers were so instrumental, because they're like, I guess we're just going to have to go right at them. We're just going to have to attack them too. They look like, I don't know if I can say it is a very, I think it's a compliment. Uh, they have a human Wolverine kind of aesthetic going on. It's like, yeah, that's kind of true. We mean that as a compliment. Has there ever been an estimate of the total tribe population count? It seems like at the peak, it was about 25,000. So that's not a ton of people, especially to cover like 250,000 acres. Like, it's just not a lot. And like I was saying earlier, half of that maybe are going to be men. And it's probably not quite half, because a lot of the Comanche men were unalived in hunting and raiding. But let's say that it is half. So you'd have 12,500 warriors. And then probably half of that is fighting age males, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. So you're looking at what? Half of 12 and a half. So that's six and a quarter. So maybe 6,000, 2,500 guys, somewhere in there, maybe 10,000 at their most, but not a lot of guys, and not a lot of guys. Yes, it's definitely a compliment, says John Doe about the Wolverines. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Has there ever been? Okay, got that. I read somewhere they practice horse breeding to breed the best horses for their lifestyle. They did, and they were one. I think maybe the only. No, the Nez Perce did, but one of the few tribes that really understood uh, horse breeding. But they would use the horses, or favor the horses that would seem like the runt of the litter for us. It confused a lot of contemporary writers, because it would just be like, we're expecting what they can only kind of go what they hear of over accounts from people, firsthand accounts. So when they see this fearsome tribe who's running everybody out of Texas, who's taken over the whole of the territory, they expect in their minds, at least initially, to see a very, very large people on large statuesque horses, and they are a lot of times shocked that that's not what they see. And a lot of times, if you see pictures of Quanah, and it's fairly ironic that he became the um, poster boy, I guess, for the example for the tribe, because he's in general has a little different features. His mom is an Anglo settler, so he has like a long straight nose. He's much taller than most. S.C. Gwynn makes the point, like, if you removed his tan and got him like a little haircut, it would be tough to. He has a lot of features that lend himself more to an Anglo kind of look. So he's the poster boy for the tribe, but not necessarily a total visual representation of what many settlers would have seen. But not totally inaccurate. There's lots of accounts with Comanche with light hair, because they had just adopted so many people. Or also Mexican settlers would be adopted into the tribe. Generally children, but you'd see dark hair, dark eyes that didn't match the features of the rest of the Comanche. Very, very, very common. You'd see accounts of Herman Lehman himself, like long brown hair, very, very pale skin, at least initially. Let's see. So I think they confused a lot of people. They weren't exactly what they were expecting to see. Um, Elite Super Grunt says the wind chill and humidity in Texas makes the winter suck. It does. Once it gets combined with that wind, man, before I moved here, I was like, it can't be that bad. Like, it sucks. It sucks. It sucks. Let's see. Has there ever been an estimate? Okay, we got that. I read somewhere. Okay, got that. Kind of like the Nez Perce. Yeah, like in there, they have more horses. I think they're probably better riders just because they're on the. I think they're. It's pretty much agreed upon the Comanche are in general the best riders, and the horse herds that they have would be much bigger than the Nez Perce, much bigger than Cheyenne, Lakota, et al. Let's see. Got that. Mongol horses are ponies. Yeah, they're just much smaller, stubby-legged horses than we think of war horses being like a Knights Templar situation, like big, tall war horses. And that's not really what you want when you're doing plains raiding. You want the fastest fleet of foot animal you can find. Adoption is a secret to a strong tribe. It depends. Like in the case of where you have an infant mortality rate that's and a miscarriage rate that's as high as it is, and a male warrior rate with a casualty and mortality rate that's as high as it is, and you have 25,000 people total, you're going to have to make some concessions there just to keep the numbers up, which they did. The wind just punches you in the face. Hey, what's up, Doc? It does. I'm glad I'm not the only one who thinks this because the Texas wind, there's nothing you can do. You can put on as many jackets as you want. It's going to cut right through them. All right. I'm going to look through the chat here. We'll keep this one about an hour because we're going to come back tonight too and hit the main episode or the main live stream. And then tomorrow should be it might be Thursday, but we'll have a episode on the 10 most brutal battles in Old West history. That's going to be really cool. Then we have another one this weekend and live streams and shorts all the way through. So December is a busy month. We're going to have a lot of content coming out. Oh yeah, and I'm thinking about we've got man. I was looking at it last night. 60 members somewhere in that area. So I'm thinking about making at least a couple of these coffee chats members only, at least in the near future. I just didn't want to do it today because didn't want to surprise you guys. But we got enough members where it's like, okay, I think we can start doing a couple times a week a members only live stream. Let's see. The wind punching got that. Each Mongol soldier had between 4 and 6 ponies so they could switch out. I've read accounts so they could cover well over 100 miles in a day. That sounds feasible. And the Comanche had the same thing because they had where your average Lakota chief might have your Lakota chief might have like 50 horses. Your average Comanche warrior is going to have like 100. A chief might have like 1,500. There are just so many of them. And the accounts say that when a chief died, or I think it's just a chief, that they would unalive all of his ponies with him. I don't know, guys. I've thought about that, and it's like every time one of them is unalived, you're going to unalive 1,500 horses. I don't know. I think something may have got lost in translation, but they would unalive a lot of them. The Navajo would do that. I don't know. I guess you got to come up with something, but it seems like why we got to do that? But it speaks to them having so many horses that they could do something like that. I'm more of a custard fan, but I will do coffee when beer isn't a thing. Anything you choose. It's BYOB or BYOC. Bring your own coffee. Bring your own custard. You have a little bit different. Surrender Monkey, what's up, man? You have a little bit different definition of custards and puddings in the UK. So is a custard like a pudding here? Let's see. Adoption is a secret. Yeah, we got that one. Yes, every Comanche soldier would have a number of mounts. I've read accounts of them taking 2 or 3 ponies on a raid. One of the ponies eventually giving out. They did not view animals the same way that we viewed them. They are, in general, a utility, a tool, right? So they were hard on their ponies in general, like not all the time, but much less concerned with their welfare than we might be today. So they would run an animal until it just gave out, like it just plumb gave out. It would collapse. They would unalive it if it wasn't unalived already, and then take the entrails of the animal, wrap it around them, and then eat like clean them out and eat those raw as they rode, and just do that till they got home. Like it, we're talking hard people here. This is wild. Custard is a part of a trifle that makes it great. We don't even know what a trifle is in America, man. I'll be honest with you. We know we know what bread is. We know what tacos are, ironically, but we know what pizza is, but we don't know what a trifle is. At least I don't. Surrender Monkey beer is always a thing. Yeah, it is. It is. Good cold beer, you can't beat it. I just drank a beer, Coors Light. That's the benefit of being self-employed. Right on, Surrender Monkey. Or no, I'm sorry, Elite Super Grunt. It was right next to. I was looking up there. Can't beat that. I wish I could do that. I can't do that. It takes my whole productivity out for the day. But different strokes for different folks, man. Enjoy. You might need two. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's jelly sponge, custard, and cream is a trifle. Okay, all right, I can deal with that. I've been preaching the good word of Jaffa cakes for a while on here. You know that, Surrender Monkey. All right. Any more questions on the bands? We got some great questions today. I thought it'd be an interesting topic. It's like, yeah, a lot of people don't know that there were autonomous bands. It's a decentralized organization within the Comanche. It's like tribal cryptocurrency or like tribe crypto, something like that. All decentralized. Mongols, horses are ponies. Okay, we got that. So tonight, I do not have the topic solidified yet. So I'm gonna trifle through a couple ideas here, see what I come up for tonight. And then today, man, back to the grindstone, guys. We got to get a couple scripts done, got to get some filming done. Like I said, we've got a bunch of stuff coming for you. What else? There'll be some shorts out later today as well. And I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, other than that, like I said, I want to do some members only stuff here. We'll start that hopefully tomorrow. I want to do a members only book club. I think you guys would enjoy that to kind of go over books like Comanche Empire here, Empire of the Summer Moon. Gosh, I got literally, I don't know if I literally have oodles of them. I don't know if you can have literally oodles of anything, but we got a lot. We got a lot. So that might be something we do moving forward. We'll take a vote on it tonight. Did the Comanche ever have intertribal wars? Tons of them, tons of them. With the Apache, they drove the Apache basically out of Texas. With the Tonkawa, with the Cheyenne at sometimes. Uh, gosh, with the I'm trying to think who did. It's easier to think about who they didn't. Some with the Navajo. I did an episode on that with the I think it's called the Battle of the Wichita Mountains, where it's they actually raided a camp that Quanah Parker was in when he was a child. Um, Trying to think the Ute. Yeah, it's a then they actually feuded with the Kiowa for a little while over basically over the territories of Oklahoma and northern Texas, and then that was several years, and then after a while they were just like, listen, man, like why don't we just get along? And from there on, the Comanche and the Kiowa were super tight. If you saw a group of Comanche, you could probably assume that there was a couple Comanche or a couple Kiowa in the group. They were just boys. They were just super cool with each other. And they're not super. I mean, they're similar to the outside observer, but the Kiowa, much, much smaller tribe, way smaller tribe than even the Comanche, and simultaneously a way more complex culture. But horsebound warriors, super skillful riders. To the outside observer, it would be hard to visually differentiate between the two. Cake and custard, food of the gods, says Surrender Monkey. It's good, man. Honestly, I think British food is kind of underrated. Not the jellied eels, okay? The beans on a potato, we can't have that. Some of these things we got to chill out on. But Jaffa cakes, a lot of the desserts. What is it? Yorkshire pudding, that looks good. What else? There's several good things. There's a lot of good things about British food. The chocolates are great. Let's see. A Ritter sports bar. Well, you guys nailed it with that. Cadbury eggs. Okay, okay. I'm moving on. Coming back and refocusing. Was there fighting between the different Comanche bands? No, they seem to be nothing that I found. There seemed to be an implicit, immovable understanding that if you're a Comanche, you're not going to fight within the tribe. Let's see. Did the Comanche? Okay, we got that. Comanche versus Comanche. Yeah, that just didn't really happen. Not that I've ever found, and I've looked because that was a question for me too. Did these bands always get along? I'm sure there's disagreements between some of the chiefs, as there are in any organization. Um, and there was a lot of smaller bands folding into larger bands because they just, in most cases, just couldn't make it on their own. You need a fair amount of people to be able to hunt and gather enough to survive. But no, I just never have found any conflict between the bands. Great question though. I've wondered that many times myself. And that's not entirely the case for the continent, right? Like there are tribes whose bands would at least fight a little bit. Let's see. I mean, look at America. We had a civil war. No civil war, says John Doe. Yeah, right. Let's see. Making sure I'm not missing anything. All right, we are just about at an hour. So I'm gonna get back to the grindstone here. Nice to have a nice little midday break with everybody. This is an actual drink, not a promo. But these will be coming out very soon, very soon. So we got those coming out. We got t-shirts coming out. We'll have a book coming out soon, which I'm really excited about. So lots of stuff coming y'all's way. Thank you all for all the support. As always, really, truly, thank you so much. I have a great time doing these. Hopefully, y'all do too. We're building a really cool little community here. So can't thank you all enough. Come on back this evening. It'll be the standard time, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we'll have some shorts out in between that. Another episode coming out tomorrow, hopefully, another one this weekend. So stay tuned. Lots of good stuff. Thank you all again, truly, for all of the support. And y'all go have a good day. We'll see you this evening. God bless. We'll talk to you later. Bye.